300 that was chronicled in the late 1930s by the Texas Write Project as a part of the larger Federal Writers Project under the Work Projects Administration. In it, she shared memories of medical care, material culture, foodways, and daily life from her childhood. Due to the scarcity of historical records on enslaved and recently freed African Americans, much of what historians knew about Lou Mabel Turner's life came from the Work Projects Administration. It says, Lou was born into slavery to Maria and Sam Mabel. She and her mother were held as slaves West and married Jaru Guidry West. Since the age of 11, Lou's mother had been with the West family and was likely born in Louisiana, where the West family lived prior to moving to Texas. Lou, referred to as Massa, owned 5 slaves, and his wife, who Lou called Missy, owned 2 slaves. Although Lou referred to the West land as a plantation, the West family was primarily stock raisers of cattle, horses, hogs, and sheep. According to Lou's interview, she spent most of her childhood with Mary West. She stayed by Mary's side quite often. She slept in a trundle bed next to Mary's bed, and when Mary made trips to see her grandchildren in the French settlement in Louisiana, she brought Lou along. Lou enjoyed those trips because she had an opportunity to play with other children and not be in the cotton fields. Mary, who was scarce in the rural Texas area at that time, other families often sent for Mary when they needed medical care. In her interview, she remembered that Mary was kind to her and brought her pretty cotton-striped dresses, separate from the other enslaved African Americans who lived in the West Place. In her interview, Lou noted that the slave quarters consisted of log houses with garden patches and remembered always having plenty to eat. A circuit riding preacher would come through once a month, and in between those visits, Mary West conducted religious services in her home for everyone on the West Plantation. Lou's primary usually swatted her on her leg with a big straw from out of the field or a wet towel. The only harsh physical punishment Lou shared in her interview occurred when Richard West demanded that she get eggs out of a nest that was under a corn crib. When she told him the nest was empty, he pulled her out from up under the corn crib by her legs and whipped her. Mary became outraged. Richard said the only reason he whipped Lou was because Mary spoiled her. Lou characterized Richard West's treatment of the other enslaved laborers in positive terms, but noticed that when the Civil War came to Beaumont, he began to change. He had feared that because war was in the South, he was going to lose his slaves. And so he started selling slaves, recouping his financial investment. In doing so, he split up enslaved families. After slavery formally ended in Texas on June 19, 1865, Lou's mother had trouble getting her from Richard and Mary West. Mary didn't want to let her go. According to Lou's slave narrative and the Freedmen's Bureau records, the West initially refused to return several formerly enslaved children to the children's parents. In at least one case, the Freedmen's Bureau agency in Liberty County, Texas, which is just up the road, intervened when Richard West did not want to return 2 boys to their mother. Lou remembered that Mary returned 7 children when their parents came, and that she did not want to leave Mary West herself. On May 7, 1870, Lou married George Turner in Jefferson County, Texas. According to the census records, George Turner worked as a farm laborer, and the couple lived in Orange County, Texas, in August of 1870. In the fall, she had a daughter named Sarah. Sarah's father was identified as Barry Billum, or her other master. Sarah's 1955 death certificate said that Barry Billum was the father of 3 of her children. In 1880, Lou and her family lived in Beaumont, Texas, and George worked in a sawmill. By 1883, George had purchased 25 acres of land. In 1900, Lou and her husband, then a carpenter, owned their own home in Beaumont. The census also listed Sarah, her husband, Eli Ratcliffe, and their children in the household. After George's death on June 25, 1912, Lou's daughter and grandchildren lived with her, and Lou worked as a domestic worker, a nurse, and a midwife. She was interviewed for the Slave Narrative Project sometime between 1936 and 1938. She never learned to read and write, but she remembered that she was a woman of faith. She was a woman that believed in praying, and she would often hum a song, "Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name." On November 4th, 1939, Lou Turner died of myocarditis at her home in Beaumont, Texas. She is buried in the Blanchard Cemetery in Beaumont, Texas, where we now have a cemetery that sits behind West Tabernacle Baptist Church, is where she's buried, in the pear orchard of what we call the pear orchard of Beaumont, Texas. Thank you.